Wait, she told him not to use the inhaler. Why would the teacher do that?
He never used it today. She said it like it was good news, smiling while my son stood behind her, barely breathing. I'm Claire, an ER nurse, standing outside his elementary school at pickup, watching Ethan's chest pull tight under his shirt. She placed the inhaler in my hand like it hadn't mattered, like it hadn't been needed. But his lips were pale, his shoulders were locked. I've seen this before, right before things get bad. I crouched in front of him. Ethan, did you ask for it? He didn't answer. He looked at her. That's when something shifted. I stood up slowly, pulled her aside, lowered my voice. Why wasn't he allowed to use this? She didn't hesitate, not even a second. I told him not to. And the way she said it, calm, certain, made my stomach drop. Before we continue, please hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on the notification bell for updates. For a second, I thought I misheard her. The hallway noise spilled out behind us, kids laughing, backpacks zipping, parents calling names, but everything around me narrowed into that one sentence. I told him not to. I kept my voice level. You told him not to use his prescribed inhaler? Miss Kessler's smile didn't fully disappear. It just tightened, like she was adjusting it. He said he felt a little tight during recess, but he was running around right after. I didn't think it was necessary to interrupt the day for that. Behind her, Ethan shifted his weight. His breathing hitched, small, uneven pulls he was trying to hide. I could see him doing it, the way kids do when they don't want to get in trouble. I turned back to him immediately. Hey, look at me. His eyes flicked up, then back down. When did it start? Recess, he said quietly. And in class after. My grip tightened around the inhaler. And you asked for this? He nodded, barely. Then, almost in a whisper, twice. I looked back at her. Twice? She exhaled. Like this was becoming inconvenient. Claire, sometimes children fixate. If I allowed every student to leave the room every time they felt a little discomfort. This isn't discomfort, I cut in, sharper now. This is a documented medical condition. A couple of parents nearby slowed down, glancing over. Miss Kessler noticed. Her posture straightened. I made a judgment call, she said, quieter, controlled. And he seemed perfectly fine afterward. At that exact moment, Ethan coughed. A dry, strained sound and instinct took over. I shook the inhaler, placed it in his hand, guided it to his mouth. Deep breath. Now. He inhaled, held it, exhaled. And within seconds, I watched his shoulders drop just a fraction. Not dramatic, but enough. Enough to confirm everything I was already thinking. I stood up slowly, my pulse louder now. You don't wait and see with this, I said. You treat it early. She didn't respond right away this time. Instead, she crossed her arms. Well, she said, he didn't times need times it. As you can see, he's fine. I stared at her, trying to understand how someone could look at the same child and see something completely different. Then I turned back to Ethan one more time. Did she say anything else to you? I asked quietly. He hesitated again, longer this time, and when he finally spoke, his voice dropped even lower. She said I shouldn't ask again. She said I shouldn't ask again. The words didn't land all at once. They sank in slowly, like something heavy settling into my chest. I looked up at Miss Kessler. What does that mean? Her expression shifted just slightly, but enough. I think that's being taken out of context. Ethan stayed quiet, eyes fixed on the ground. His fingers were still wrapped around the inhaler, like he wasn't sure if someone might take it back. I crouched beside him again. Ethan, look at me. He did, reluctantly. You can tell me exactly what happened. He swallowed. I told her my chest hurt after recess. She said to sit down and breathe. He paused. Then later, in class, it got tight again. I asked if I could go to the nurse. And? I asked. He glanced over at her before answering. She said no. That I was okay. And if I kept asking, I'd have to sit out recess tomorrow for pretending. A silence stretched between us. I stood up slowly, turning back to her. You threatened to punish him for asking for his inhaler? Her jaw tightened. I didn't times threaten times him. I redirected behavior. There's a difference. Behavior? I repeated. You think this is behavioral? He has a pattern, she said, more firmly now. Transitions, especially. Recess to classroom. Activity changes. He suddenly needs something. Water, bathroom. Now this. I stared at her. You're telling me you diagnosed a pattern and overrode his medical plan because it didn't fit your schedule? That's not what I said. It's exactly what you said. Around us, the pickup line had thinned, but not disappeared. A couple of parents lingered, pretending not to listen. Miss Kessler lowered her voice. I have 24 students to manage. I can't have disruptions every 10 minutes based on perceived discomfort. I held up the inhaler. This isn't perceived. He was playing normally, she insisted. Running, laughing, no visible distress. That's not how asthma works, I said. It doesn't always look dramatic until it is. She exhaled sharply, like she was done entertaining this. Well, he didn't show signs that warranted leaving the room. I turned back to Ethan. Did you feel better after you used it just now? He nodded immediately. Did you feel like that earlier? Another nod, this one faster. I looked back at her, the gap between what she believed and what actually happened now impossible to ignore. Did you at any point contact the nurse? I asked. No. Did you document that he asked? No, because it didn't escalate to that level. My grip tightened again. You decided that. I made a judgment call, she repeated. I stepped closer, lowering my voice again, but there was nothing calm left in it now. You don't get to make that call. She met my stare, unflinching this time. In a classroom, she said quietly, I do. I let that sit for half a second. Then I turned back to Ethan. Did she ever tell you not to ask again? He didn't hesitate this time. He nodded. That nod changed everything. It wasn't confusion anymore. It wasn't a miscommunication. It was a line that had been drawn and my son had been pushed behind it. I straightened, turning fully toward Miss Kessler. He asked you twice. He told you he couldn't breathe, and you told him to stop asking. Her posture stiffened. I told him to settle down and try to regulate his breathing. Children escalate when you reinforce. He wasn't escalating, I cut in. He was struggling. A couple walking past slowed again. One of them lingered just long enough to catch the tone. Miss Kessler noticed. Her voice dropped, more controlled now. Claire, I understand you're concerned, but I have to consider the entire classroom. If I allow one student to leave repeatedly, he wasn't leaving repeatedly, I said. He was asking for medical help. Ethan shifted behind me. I could feel him listening, shrinking into himself with every word. Then, quietly, almost like he didn't want to make it worse, he added, You said if I asked again, I'd miss recess tomorrow. The air tightened. Miss Kessler's eyes flicked to him, then back to me. That's not how I meant it. How did you mean it? I asked. To discourage unnecessary interruptions. I let out a short, disbelieving breath. So you decided it was unnecessary. He didn't appear in distress. I stepped closer, my voice low but sharp. You don't wait for distress. That's the entire point. She crossed her arms again, defensive now. I've worked with children for 15 years. I know when something is serious. And I've worked in an ER for 10, I shot back. I know what happens when people wait too long. That landed. Not enough to change her stance, but enough to make her hesitate. For a second, then she doubled down. He was running at recess, laughing, engaged. Those are not indicators of a child in crisis. No, I said. They're indicators of a child trying to keep up until he can't. A staff member near the entrance was watching us now. not intervening, just watching. I turned slightly, raising the inhaler just enough for it to be seen. You didn't send him to the nurse. You didn't let him use this. You told him to stop asking. On what authority? Miss Kessler inhaled slowly. On my professional judgment in the classroom. That's not your call to make. It is when I'm responsible for maintaining order. There it was again. Order. Not safety, not health, order. I glanced at Ethan, still quiet, still clutching his backpack strap like he didn't want to be noticed anymore. Then I looked back at her, and if he had gotten worse, I asked. She didn't answer right away, just a fraction too long. Before she could, a voice cut in behind us. Is there a problem here? We both turned. The assistant principal stood a few steps away, eyes moving from me to Ethan, to the inhaler still in my hand. I didn't hesitate. Yes, I said, there is. And I lifted it slightly. A serious one. The office door closed behind us with a soft click, but the tension didn't soften with it. Miss Kessler sat across from me, back straight, hands folded like this was a routine meeting. The assistant principal, Mr. Alvarez, took the chair between us, his expression careful, measured. Claire, he began, can you walk me through what happened? I didn't rush it. I laid it out clearly. Recess, the tightness, the 2 requests, the denial, the threat. Every detail, no exaggeration. I didn't need it. When I finished, the room went quiet. Mr. Alvarez turned to Miss Kessler. Is that accurate? She shifted slightly. It's a version of events, but it's missing context. Then give it, he said. She exhaled. Ethan has a tendency to request things during transitions. Today, after recess, he said his chest felt tight, but he had been running, laughing, completely engaged. I asked him to sit and regulate his breathing. He recovered quickly. I leaned forward. Recovered or stopped asking? Her eyes flicked to mine, irritation breaking through. He appeared fine, she insisted. Later in class, he asked again. At that point, I believed it was behavioral reinforcement. I discouraged further interruptions. Discouraged, I repeated, by threatening to take away recess. I did not times threaten times him. Ethan's voice came from the doorway before I could respond. You said I'd lose it if I kept asking. All 3 of us turned. He was standing just inside, the office assistant behind him, unsure if she should pull him back out. Mr. Alvarez softened slightly. Ethan, it's okay. You can come in. He stepped closer, small but steady, still holding the inhaler. Mr. Alvarez looked back at Miss Kessler. Was he denied access to his medication? She hesitated. That was the first real crack. I made a judgment call, she said finally. Did you contact the nurse at any point? He asked. No. Document the request? No. I watched Mr. Alvarez's expression change subtle, but there. Concern. Not just for Ethan, but for what this meant. I stood, moving slightly toward the side of the room, and that's when I saw it. A cabinet near the wall, slightly open. Inside, several inhalers, not just one. Not just Ethan's. I stepped closer before I could stop myself. Whose are these? I asked. Mr. Alvarez followed my line of sight. Student medications. Some are kept here temporarily. I turned back slowly. Temporarily? He hesitated. When needed. I looked at Miss Kessler. How many of them asked today? Her silence stretched. Too long. Mr. Alvarez noticed it too. Laura, he pressed. She straightened, defensive again, but the confidence wasn't the same now. If I let every child leave every time they claim discomfort, she said, sharper now, there would be constant disruption. I have to make decisions in real time. There it was. Not just Ethan. A pattern. A system unofficial, unspoken but enforced. I felt something shift in me then. Not just anger anymore, clarity. I turned back to Mr. Alvarez. I'm filing a formal complaint, I said, and I want every instance reviewed, not just today. Miss Kessler let out a short, frustrated breath. This is being blown out of proportion. I looked at her, really looked at her this time. At what point, I asked quietly, does a child have to struggle before you decide it's real? She didn't answer, didn't look at me. And that silence said more than anything else she had. I nodded once, then turned slightly toward the door. But before I stepped out, I stopped. Anne said the one thing that made the entire room go still. So you decided which kids were allowed to breathe? The investigation started faster than I expected. By the next morning, I had already received a call from the district office requesting a formal statement, not a casual follow-up, something structured, documented. They weren't treating this like a misunderstanding. I sat at my kitchen table while Ethan ate quietly across from me, the inhaler set beside his cereal like it belonged there now. I gave them everything. Times, words, what Ethan said, what she said, the way she said it. By the end of that call, the tone had shifted. What began as a concern was now being described as a potential policy violation involving medical neglect. And it didn't stop with me. Within 2 days, other parents were contacted. Then more came forward. Not identical stories, but close enough. Kids being told to wait it out. Kids discouraged from leaving class. One parent mentioned their daughter had stopped asking for her inhaler altogether because she didn't want to get in trouble. That part stayed with me, because I saw it in Ethan too. That second night, he asked me something quietly while I was tucking him in. Am I allowed to use it whenever I need it? Not times can I... Am I allowed... I sat on the edge of his bed, steadying myself before answering. You don't need permission to breathe, I said, not from anyone. He nodded, but not like it fully landed yet. That's what this had done. It didn't just delay treatment. It made him question whether he was supposed to ask at all. By the end of the week, Miss Kessler was no longer in the classroom. Administrative leave, they called it at first. But the details kept coming. Internal emails were reviewed. In one of them, she had written about frequent interrupters. In her class, students she believed used requests like bathroom breaks, water, and medical needs to avoid transitions. Ethan's name was there, marked as patterned. That word again. There was no school policy backing what she did. No directive. No gray area. Just her decision, repeated, reinforced, and never reported. She hadn't forgotten the inhaler. She had chosen not to let him use it. The final report came 2 weeks later. Violation of student health protocols. Failure to follow documented medical plans. Endangerment through denial of access. Her contract was terminated. A report was filed with the state licensing board. And the school? They moved fast after that. New policy reminders were sent to every teacher, mandatory training sessions scheduled, clear language added. No staff member may deny or delay access to prescribed medication under any circumstance. It should have already been that clear. I considered legal action. I sat with a lawyer, went through every detail again. There was a case, a strong one. But in the end, what mattered most to me wasn't dragging it further. It was making sure it stopped there. That it didn't happen again. Not to Ethan. Not to anyone. A few weeks later, I walked up to the same school for pickup. Same building. Same doors. But it didn't feel the same. Ethan came out with his new teacher, a younger woman who immediately knelt down in front of him before he even reached me. "Hey," she said gently. "Did you need your inhaler at all today?" Ethan shook his head. "Okay," she smiled, "but if you do, you tell me right away. Deal?" He nodded. No hesitation. No looking around, no checking who was watching, just a simple nod. That was the difference. On the walk back to the car, I glanced down at him. He was talking about something normal math, a game at recess, but his breathing was steady, easy, the way it should be. I opened the passenger door for him, then paused for just a second, looking at the inhaler in his backpack pocket. Still there, still his, and this time, no one between him and it. He never used it that day. Not because he didn't need it, but because someone decided he shouldn't. That won't happen again. No one decides when my son gets to breathe.
Would you have caught this sooner or trusted the teacher? Tell me in the comments.